Hey guys, so I thought that for this little masterclass, it would be appropriate at this time of year, as this is the last masterclass this month before Christmas, that it would be appropriate to talk about healthy communication and the reactive behaviour that we tend to have with sometimes certain family members. And it's completely normal. We all have someone or maybe more than one person that sometimes it's harder to get on with, to see eye to eye. And the reason for this is particularly when it comes to family, we all have certain expectations, and those family members come in with an expectation of how you should behave, or we have an expectation about how they should behave. And when the expectation isn't met, often a part of us takes it personally, and it can cause reactive behaviour. It can cause us to feel discomfort and pain, and that's kind of what I want to talk about today, because what happens is we end up then both reacting, and the relationship falls apart, or it gets challenging and uncomfortable. And I'm going to explore with you why that happens and what's going on underneath it, so that you can start to heal these relationships. And you might not want to completely heal the relationship with this person. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but it's going to help you to navigate and to be able to communicate with them more effectively. So reactive behaviour is a completely unconscious way that we tend to react when a part of us has been triggered. So there's 4 main types, and this is learned behaviour. It's completely normal. We learned it because it helped us at some point to survive, to fit into the family system. So it served a purpose for us, and we take that into adulthood unless we start to uncover it, become curious about it, and why it's there. And that's when it gives us the opportunity to be able to change it or to respond in a better way. So there is freeze, fight, flight, and facade, and they all begin with F, just to make it easy to say. And so you've probably heard of fight or flight, that in terms of a reactive behavior before, but we also have freeze and facade. And these are ways in which you will behave to protect yourself when a part of you feels triggered. And so if somebody says something to you and you immediately go into this reactive behavior, it's just because of what it means to a part of you. And just knowing that your reactive behavior and your default is really helpful, because often in couples, when I've done workshops and seen couples in workshops, or coached people around their relationships, it comes up a lot where your reactive behavior is different to your partner's, and then actually that triggers you more or them more. So a really good example of this is if you are someone who likes to flight or hide, that's sometimes me, freeze or flight, but it also depends on what part of you's been triggered, right? You might react differently if you've been triggered in a different way. So sometimes my fighter does come out, but in a general sense, it's freeze or flight. And if you are a flight person and you are married to someone who is a fighter, then that causes a lot of conflict, because the fighter wants to have it out there and then. They want to sort it out, they want to have it out with you, and they want you to hear them. Whereas you're just legging it, and when you leave that conversation and you leave the room, it gives the fighter nothing to be able to say, to not feel heard, and it leaves them even more angry. So it's really useful to be able to know. So when you think about who or whatever situation might be coming up this year for you with your family system, I know for me, I experience challenges with my mum sometimes, and it's something I've been working on for a while, and it's certainly dramatically improved. But this is where the expectations are totally different, and when you go underneath what the expectation is, you can uncover that actually from their perspective it normally has your best interest at heart for what they believe is best for you. And what's often challenging, particularly for parents, is that actually you know what's best for you. And so being able to healthily communicate that in an appreciative way rather than a reactive way can really help improve the communication and the bond between you guys. So let's look at how we can reduce this reactive behavior then. So when you are finding yourself in a conversation with somebody and they have reacted emotionally to what you've said, the first thing to do is to try and get curious about what that reaction might be from, or why they've reacted like that. Because if you can be curious instead of being triggered yourself, you're going to create space for understanding, to be able to hear them and their perspective, because their experience is different to yours. Whatever you've said, if you've said it, you've said it with a good intention, or, completely neutrally, and they've reacted to it, it's because it means something different to a part of them. They have experienced what you said in a way that wasn't what you've intended. So rather than getting reactive back and defensive, try to slow down and be really curious about their reaction. And then you can ask them questions like, oh, like, what did that mean to you when I said that? I'm curious to know why you've reacted that way. And it creates space for them to be able to go, oh, well, it meant that, my idea wasn't good enough, or whatever it is that it's meant to them. It gives them space to be able to explain that. And then you can understand, oh, I can see why that would annoy you. Well, that wasn't my intention. What I meant was da, da, da. And you're creating that space for you guys to be able to communicate in a healthy heart level. The next thing is, my next point is to be able to communicate from your heart. So if you can, and you might need to, if you've been triggered yourself, so perhaps it's the other way around, perhaps somebody said something to you and you've reacted, or you feel defensive, ask for a little bit of space and then try and come back to your heart to be like, their intention might not have been to piss me off. Their intention might not have been to hurt me. I wonder what it was. And then you can come back and you can say, what was your intention when you said that? Because to me, it made me feel like this, or I heard it like this. And then you're not blaming and shaming that person for making you feel a certain way when it might not have been their intention. And then you can say, you can create space for understanding their perspective and why they said that, and then share your experience so that maybe they can be more aware of how it sounded to you in the future. When you react, own it, guys. This is a big one, and it's hard to do because we've been so conditioned to not want to be wrong, because we were told off for being wrong when we were younger, and all these kind of things. So to actually say, yeah, do you know what? I overreacted, or I understand that my reactive behavior wasn't appropriate then, or my reactive behavior might have upset you. And so to be able to, and you don't even need to use those words, just own it, just understand that, okay, I've reacted because of what it means to a part of me. A part of me has learned reactive behavior to protect my heart. And so that's why I've done that. And when you can own it, it offers compassion and forgiveness from that other person to say, oh, you're just human. We all react. It's normal. And the vulnerability of that connects both of you back to your heart, when you can just be, and maybe you do need that space before, because often in the reaction, you're not very conscious. And so for me, after I've reacted, I have to take a little bit of space and time to be like, okay, what did that mean to me? Oh, it meant this. That's why I reacted. And to own that reaction, not, oh, this person is blaming me, or this person doesn't like me, or they're criticizing me, they must want to hurt me. It's not about them, it's about what it's meant to you. And then when you know what it's meant to you, you can come back and you can own your reaction, and you can say, if it's relevant, if you feel it's necessary for you to apologize for your reaction, you can then come back and be like, I apologize for my reaction. It came from this place. What you said meant this to me. And then you're creating that space and that openness to be able to be heard, and to be able to hear that person's reasoning, because 99.9% of the time people aren't purposefully wanting to be nasty. It's just the way that they've been conditioned, and the way that their values are, that they might say something that triggers you, and normally it's not their intention. But when we react, we act like it was their intention, and we feel hurt and we feel wounded and we get angry and we want to, you know, push them out of our lives or whatever it is. I mean, actually, if we can be curious as to, you know, well, how come they're quite critical? If they're critical to me, maybe they're really critical to themselves, or maybe that's a projection of how they don't feel good enough, and so they can constantly see the things that they don't feel good enough around themselves and other people. That happens all the time. It's projection. So it can offer a little bit of compassion when you can remove yourself and to be like, oh, that's their experience, that's about them, it's not about me. It creates that space. And then when you know, okay, that's about them, it's not about me, you can come it back into your heart and be curious. Why did you say that? You know, because to me, I heard it as criticism or whatever. And then they'll be able to be like, oh, you know, my intention was, so a really good example of this is my experience with my mum has been very critical. And so growing up, she'd say lots of things like, you look ugly in that, or like you've got a spot, or whatever. And as I've got older and I've been able to have this healthy communication with her, I've been able to say, well, I'm curious why you said that. And then she can reflect on, oh, well, actually, I just want you to feel confident and to feel attractive. And I know that when I've got a spot, or if I was wearing that, I wouldn't feel attractive. And then her heart's open, and I can be like, oh, okay, I can see your intention with that, Mum. However, to me, it makes me feel not good enough. And you're owning your experience and you're creating space to be able to hear theirs. It's really helpful. And then finally, I think I've said actually to create space. So if you are in your reactive behavior, take a step back if you need to. If you are with someone who wants that fight, their objective or their need is to be heard in that moment, because that's how they mattered when they were younger, to fight and to be heard. So if you acknowledge that their need to be heard by saying, I'm not leaving this conversation forever, I just need a bit of space and I'll come back to you, that will help them feel heard and not want to chase after you for more and more arguments. You can tell that I know this possibly from experience. So I'm going to offer you guys some healthy words now that might help, just so that you can, you know, after you've had that space, you can come back and you can be able to represent yourself. And some ones that serve me really, really well that I help my clients use as well. So if you want to watch this back or just take notes while I'm saying it, then I recommend you do that and start practicing them, because you're not going to get it right straight away. It really does take practice. So when you know that you've got a difficult conversation coming up, or you're going to see someone that you know that triggers you, be really, really kind to that part of you that's going to feel triggered, and remind that part of you that it's not their intention. Their behavior is coming from their own wounds, their own experiences, their own values. It's not really about you at all. It's just about what it means to them. So you can protect yourself in that way. And then if you do find yourself reacting, practice coming back and saying, you know what, I reacted this way, I apologize for that. If I had my time again, I would have and practice these words, and you will start to be able to heal the relationship bit by bit, because normally when we use this healthy language, you're not going to trigger a reactive behavior in them. If you're the sort of person that a little bit like myself, that it really doesn't like conflict, then you can use these healthy words, because they are not going to trigger, when used properly anyway and genuinely, they're not going to trigger reactive behavior in someone. It will soften them and it will connect them to their heart as well. So words that I use that are super helpful are, in my experience. This is so powerful, because you're not blaming and you're not saying that it's their fault, which will trigger them, right? It's saying you experienced their behavior in a certain way, you're owning it as your experience, and you're not putting the blame on them, which will cause them to react. And there's so much empowerment in that. And another way of saying that is, for me, just using the words for me. So they say something and you can say, well, for me, I think this, or for me, I want this, you know, and you're not saying that you're wrong, I'm right. It's like you're honoring your own experience. You feel heard, and your experience is your experience. No one can take that away from you. That is true for you, right? But we're creating space for their experience might be different, and curiosity for what that experience is. If I had my time again, this is really, really helpful. I remember one of the biggest arguments David and I ever had, and it's really interesting because it shows the difference in values, was we were on holiday in France and we went to the Palace of Versailles, and there was the most ridiculous queue I've ever seen. It would have taken us all day to get in. And I just have a value of, no, like I'm not doing that. I'm either going to see if I can get in another way, or I'm not going, because I'm not wasting my life in a queue, right? Whereas David's value is, no, you do the right British thing and you queue up. and basically, to cut a long story short, I managed to sneak in, get tickets throughout, but it wasn't like I was being dishonest. I just walked in and there was a free ticket person, so I just went and got my ticket and it was fine. And then I said to David, come on, we can just walk in, I've got a ticket now. And then we ended up cutting in the queue, and he was literally so mad at me, and he was like, this is my value system, you just made me feel like I'm a dishonest person. And the way I was able to heal that was, in my experience, my value system is that it's not dishonest, but I understand that it was for you, and I apologize. If I had my time again, I would have heard out your experience earlier, and I would have done it in a way that suited us both better. And it just softened it straight away, because he could then see, okay, she wasn't intentionally trying to sabotage me and make me feel uncomfortable. That was just her values. And vice versa. You know, I've always been a small person who's been able to kind of just be like nice and smile, and people are nice to me, and things kind of go well. And that's not been his experience. So we saw it as different. And that was not my intention. It's kind of similar to if I had my time again. So powerful, because you're not saying that you were wrong, because genuinely what you said, you know, it's, you know, when you just cannot believe that someone's got over there from what you've said over here, and you're like, and all you want to do is be like, that's not right, like that's not what I meant, you're wrong. Like this is when that's not my intention. It can give you power, because you're saying to them that you acknowledge their experience, but you're like, literally, that was not my intention. My intention was da, 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 da. So your experience is still valid, and you're still being heard as well, without having to be like, no, but it wasn't like this, it wasn't like that, which happens all the time, and it can be very frustrating when you're stuck in that trap. Which used to happen with me and my mum quite a lot as well. So and I just want to finish actually with a story that my coach shared recently around her brother, who I think is a bit older than her, and she's 50, and she was going to go and see him or something like that, and she only stayed for a shorter period of time than he expected. And she then got a text from him that was really, really reactive, like, you don't value me, da, 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 da. I can't believe that's more important than seeing your brother. And they lost their brother, another one of their brothers, last year, I think. So they're all highly sensitive around spending time with each other as well. And her, when she got that message, she felt really wounded by it, really upset, because her intention was she had other things to do, and she'd seen him and then she needed to go. And so she gave herself a little bit of space to come back to her heart, rather than just be like, are you kidding? I went out of my own way to come and see you, like, da 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 da, you know that I don't think that, and you get defensive. She took some time before she replied, and then was able to reply from her heart, from this place of, I love this person, he's in reactive mode, which is about him, it's not about me, it's about what it meant to him. And then she was able to say, I don't know exactly what it was, but something on the lines of, it was not my intention to devalue you, I left for these reasons, you're important to me, I love you, or something like that. And then a bit later, he was like, oh yes, right, whatever, at first. And then a bit later on, and she didn't reply to that, a bit later on, he then said, sorry, Eileen, I was just really looking forward to spending time with you, and I wasn't expecting you to leave so early. Let's do it again sometime. And he was able to finally come to that place of apologizing. When her experience, she said he doesn't normally do that, but because of the way she'd responded and waited, instead of getting reactive herself, she'd gone into her heart and not taken it personally. It was able to give him the space to do the same. So it's super powerful. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope that's helped in some way. And if you want any more support or whatever, you may feel free to reach out, and have a fabulous Christmas. Bye bye.